Let's see if this works now. Okay, fine. So I think we can start. Welcome, everybody. This is our first Early Career Researchers SEGH event. And first of all, I hope that all of you are safe and in good health, in good shape during this COVID pandemic time. Our main aim today is to stimulate discussion and enhance the networking among the early career researchers of the Society. And to do this, we start and we feature two speakers today, and this will provide the scene for the discussion and the interaction, hopefully. Also, we expect interaction from you through questions that you can submit throughout the session. And you can do this in the chat window. We have two question and answered short slots in the program. And during these slots, you can also raise hands. You can use the reactions tool for this and ask your question after you unmute yourself. It will be good the rest of the time to be muted, so we minimize noise. Also we have some poll activities organized to make it a bit more interaction. So the first poll activity is an icebreaker activity. And this activity is open at the moment. You can access it and you can enter the poll. You need to use your browser for this. I will provide now the link. So this is the site you need to visit. And once you are on this site, then you will see a window. It will ask you for a username. And then you will have to enter this by cut and paste. I just put it in the chat now. And so you can start doing this at the moment. And let me now share my screen. Hopefully this will work. And we can see the answers as they are coming in. Okay, so I will leave this on. It asks what are the new hobbies you picked up during the quarantine. And now I will hand in to Keith. Maybe he wants to say a few words and then start with the speakers. Keith?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ariadne. I just wanted to add my welcome. Ariadne and I, we were both on the board of the Society for Environmental Geochemistry and Health. I've been active in the Society since 2008. And it's been a great forum for me to kind of meet people, researchers with similar interests, and also work on some collaborations with people that I've met through that. So it's if you take away only one thing from this meeting, it's get active, get involved in professional societies, because it's a great way to advance your career. I'd also like to introduce our first speaker. Again, Professor Jane Entwistle is very active in SEGH, and I met her at one of the SEGH conferences many years ago. And I think, Jane, you also hosted a conference in 2015? In
We only had one at Newcastle. I can't remember what year it was.
Yes,
but,
they're all a blur.
they are a bit. I'm just going to echo that. You know, join the society. I joined as a PhD student, and you know, still involved.
Right. So Could somebody mute? Oh, great, thank you. So Professor Entwistle is going to be talking today about the Home Biome Project, which is an extension of her work with potentially hazardous elements that are present in many media, including air. And Jane is going to be giving a presentation on that today. So please welcome Jane, and looking forward to hearing the presentation.
Okay, so I will stop sharing my screen. So in terms of the new hobbies, reading and walking, I think, are winning. And then I will invite you, Jane, to share your screen and your presentation, and you can start.
Okay, I will just turn the video off while I do this. Let's see if I can get my screen sharing. I've got screen 2 on. Press share. You'll have to let me know in a moment if you can see that.
Yes, yes.
Excellent. So, and can you see the presentation style? I've got multiple screens, you see, on my PC, so yeah, I'm never quite sure which ones are displaying. In which case, I'll make a start. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. As I said to Keith, I've been a member of SEGH since I was a PhD student many years ago, and what you put into the society you will get out in volumes, and hopefully part of my talk today will highlight and emphasize that. So I want to talk about the Home Biome Project. I should say that at the start, I should say that my research addresses problems at the interface between geochemistry and human health, but I'm an environmental scientist. And one of the ways I've become interested over the years in working, I guess, with public and communities is to find ways that help promote this interaction between our knowledge and our work on the environment and public health, environmental health. So I guess through the medium of the Home Biome Project, I want to explore how SEGH can help support this, and how it has helped supported me. And I want to highlight a role for citizen science in projects. You know, why should we include citizens? And what are some of our learning that we've had over the last year while we've been involved in this project? So, you know, as an environmental scientist with an increasing interest in exposure science, I'm really keen now that we engage in projects in the real world, but those that help improve our environmental health literacy, both of communities that we are working for, but also in terms of practice. So let me get into the project. So Home Biome Project is very much a collaboration of SEGH. Many of the partners you'll see listed below, and I'll name them at the very end, the individuals, I've met through SEGH, and a long-term involvement in SEGH means you build up these, I guess, collaborations and friendships that when ideas come up that you want to get funding for, then you've got this ready-made network of people to ask to join or to mull around ideas. So SEGH, I'd say, is very much at the heart of this project. It's also linked to a project called Dust Safe that you might see on the website too, and that is led out of Australia, Macquarie, which is a citizen science project funded in Australia. So let me talk a little bit more specifically about the Home Biome Project. So why the Home Biome Project? Well, as an environmental scientist, I'm very much aware that we have biomes, a community of organisms in a specific environment. And there are 5 major biomes that we've been taught along the way: aquatic, grassland, forest, desert, and tundra. And I guess I've been questioning why we don't now have a home biome. To some extent, with rapid globalization, it's probably one of the fastest growing biomes on our planet. And so this project is about shining a spotlight on our home environment, our home biome. We're going to look at the chemicals in the house dust. We're also interested in the microbiology in the house dust and the interaction between the two. So I will say more about that as we go through the presentation. So why am I interested in this? Well, clearly indoor dust has a whole range of sources. It may be from outdoor particles brought inside on clothes. It may be from footwear, pets, cooking, smoking, things we do in our indoor environment. And particulates in our indoor environment can get very, when we breathe them in, the dust can penetrate our lungs. We're very much aware as a community of the range of potentially harmful components in this dust, which can then transfer into our blood and to other parts of the body. So I'm interested in not only researching it from an academic level, but also how we get communities more involved, and hence the Home Biome project. So why indoor dusts and why citizen science? So again, as a community of researchers in SEGH, we're particularly conscious of the role of fine particulate matter, and that contaminants in such fine material can be more readily absorbed. And young children are perhaps the most at risk. Often they have higher absorption of a range of the contaminants once they ingest it. They have more hand-to-mouth activity, and they have greater contact with the floor. But I think the part I want to emphasise today and perhaps start a discussion around is this growing need for more effective information sharing, this public science interface, and how we start to improve and work with communities around environmental health literacy. So the project itself is about metals, microbes, matter, particulate matter, but I guess the learning and the discussion element is around the citizen science. So citizen science is involvement in public and scientific research. So why as scientists should we know about this? Should we get more engaged in it? Well, there's an increasing body of literature, if we start with the science box, that actually participating and involving the public in our scientific research accelerates innovation. If we want to be cynical, then it's a good way to get funding for research projects like the Home Biome project. Most major funders have calls where public participation is a fundamental part of the research. So we need to know about how to set up citizen science projects. And I would say this can be anything from you putting in a research grant to be a visiting researcher, such as with the Royal Society of Chemistry, where you want to go and work with somebody, not just on the research, but you want experience of undertaking citizen science projects and outreach. And that can be really make your application novel and a bit different to the kind of more everyday science of some of the others who are applying for the same funding pot. But there's also a growing demand of funders to see public outreach, and also there's a growing range of project funding sites out there where citizen science and co-creation projects are the research driver. So why is this? Why are we seeing more and more research and funders bodies wanting to fund this interaction? And I think it comes down to impact. So if we really want to translate our research into action and behaviour change and policy, then we're going to need to involve people. We're going to need to involve communities. And so a way of doing this is through citizen science being an integral component of our research projects. And I've put on this wheel researcher development. I think certainly over the last year, I have learnt enormously, as I'm aware of my colleagues, around citizen science projects. And I want to say a little bit about that. So there's plenty of sites out there. I'm just flagging a few at the bottom if you really want to get involved in citizen science. So I think as part of this kind of setting the scene, there are a range of models for public participation in scientific research. Kind of at the entry level, we have contributory projects. And these are projects where individuals, citizen scientists collect samples and or record data. And this is where I flag, not necessarily a negative, but put the home biome project in perspective. This is an entry-level project for citizen science. It's like a citizen observatory model where people just collect data. And I've learned a lot along the way about how we can then start to look at these other models of citizen science. And this is where I want to urge our ECR community to really set their aspirations, to set out to look at collaborative projects. So this is where we get citizens to actually analyse samples and data, to design sampling programmes as well. And there are an increasing number of projects out there. I've come across one, CitySense, just to, I guess that flags this mantra about tell me and I will forget, show me and I will remember, but involve me and I will understand. So collaborative projects are kind of the middle ground for citizen science. But I guess where we need to be are co-created projects. And these are increasingly common in the social scientists. So our social science colleagues quite readily adopt approaches and methodologies to really engage with communities, to develop culturally appropriate, context-specific interventions, which really do have an ability to lead to behaviour change. And I think as a community of environmental scientists or even of SEGH community, we're very much still on the margins of engaging and using co-creation as a real fundamental driver as part of our research project. So we've got a lot to learn from the social sciences, and why I'm kind of encouraging you to really start to look and think about where we might build this into our research projects. Because if we want behaviour change, this is where we need to be, not the contributory end, but the co-created end. And, if we are going to tackle and address the range of sustainable development goals, then, partnership working, co-creation is the only way we're really going to do it. So jumping back to the home biome project, research suggests that citizens are more engaged and learn from that engagement when the subject matter is about their everyday lives. And so, there's no kind of better way than getting people to think about their own home and their own home environment. So it's a global study. We're generating an online dust atlas, and we're looking at a range of contaminants in the dusts. So let me show you a little bit about the site we've created so far. So as well as trying to embed research that's relevant to people's everyday experiences, dust, their home environment, research has shown that having an interactive portal is a really important part of the success of citizen science models. So please have a look at the site. I didn't decide to jump to it live. Too many other things could go wrong in such an activity. But it's been set up largely since January. And we're developing at the moment, it's just gone live, a small Spotlight City app on Newcastle, where we're starting to show some of the already available urban observatory data. So we haven't collected it on the project, but air quality data is available for Newcastle. So we thought we would package it in an accessible way to people. What we have contributed to the Newcastle data set is the indoor dust data. So rather than show you lots of numbers, I'm just going to show you some images. Slightly unfortunate to some extent that the project really kicked off in January, just moments before we went into lockdown. So you don't really want to be getting everyone sending you lots of house dust. So we've kept the publicity light, but we're increasingly getting a distribution across the UK at the moment. There are other countries also participating. And this is the kind of thing we're presenting on the website. It's interactive, it grows as we add samples, and you can go deeper down or into the images, so you can look at street level, or you could go further out to look at national level. But we don't identify individual homes. So the dot isn't indicative of an individual home that supplied that dust. It's just within a radius of that property. So it is anonymous if you do want to send us some dust in. So one of the things that we've been learning around citizen science participation is how we feed back results. Okay, so what I've got on the screen now is our current version and some snapshots of it, of our dust report that we feed back to citizens. And one of the things we've learned is sliding bars are a good way, perhaps considered to be the best approach, to communicate such health or public health related data. So we've been drawing from colleagues in other disciplines to look at the best way to communicate this data. So sliding bars. And from the frequently asked questions, we've been developing what we need to put in this report. So clearly tips for reducing dust in your home is a kind of high on people's agenda. They want to know ways to do it. They want further information about how to understand their results. And this is an example here of the kind of a second page of the report where we really break down all the elements of the information we're giving somebody. And one of the big areas of questions we've had is actually people are interested. They want to know where these substances come from. And so again, another part of the report is we break down each of the different elements and we give some highlights of where they might come from. Quite generically, but we break it down. And here's an example for lead. So I'd like to just give you a few pointers from my experience, from our experience over the course of this project. And I guess the take-home message for citizen science for me is summarised in these three: time, neutrality, and ethics. Time. Don't underestimate the amount of time it takes to develop outward-facing materials. It really is an iterative process. The things we were doing at the beginning of the project have evolved enormously based on the frequency asked questions and piloting materials and several iterations later. Neutrality. Try and use neutral words throughout. So, for example, we started saying we were analysing vacuum dust for potentially harmful elements. And actually, we should have been saying, we're going to analyse your vacuum dust for a range of metal concentrations. Because, you know, not all metals in our dust are at concentrations that are harmful. So, neutral language. And ethics. So it's not just about getting project ethics, but to work with participants. But it's also thinking about you as a researcher and a research project and a research team. And we've made it clearer now on all our publicity materials that the participants are helping the project and the science. We're not fundamentally going to solve everybody's indoor dust problems, but it's about encouraging people to get involved in the science and the project. So thinking about how we communicate science to people needs careful consideration, and we're continuing to learn. So if you're interested, it would be great to have dust samples from you. The labs are open, and we are slowly processing samples because obviously all the labs are now socially distant, so it has slowed down our capacity. But please log on to the website and do look to send us a sample. I should just highlight that everybody's dust sample looks disgusting, not just yours. So don't worry. This is one of my dust samples. I know it's one of mine because I recognise my daughter's very long hair because she hasn't had a haircut since February. We sieve it. We deal with the particulate matter. And obviously we're interested in more broadly air pollution and impacts on our health. And part of the way we communicate this to people is we want to look at indoor air quality as well as the Hoover dust, vacuum dust. So in the last couple of slides before I end my talk, I just want to show you a little bit about the indoor air quality, and then I'll end on the microbiology. I'm not going to say a lot about it because these are just generating now in the last few months once we kind of got the labs open. So this is participants are given an air equal, and over the course of a week they keep an activity diary and they monitor their PM10 levels and their PM2.5 levels. And so this is the sort of data that's now being presented on the website. People get engaged with indoor air quality through looking at their own home and their own experience. But that's quite limited in terms of what we might then do as exposure scientists. But we're interested then in taking all of this data and finding our averages. And this is what you've got in front of you at the moment. So we've got weekly average PM10 and PM2.5 of the first 12 households that supported this work. And so we can start to get a sense of where we might be in terms of our overall level of exposure on a weekly basis to particulate matter. Homes with smokers, as you might expect, have a lot higher average weekly exposure. But now we know what's in the dust, in the vacuum bag, and now we have some kind of minimum and maximum data for particulates in the air. We can start to do some calculations about potential exposure. So I'm going to skip through because I'm conscious of time. And one area, I guess this is mainly more on the research focus side, is the indoor microbiome. And we've only been doing this for a couple of weeks because the labs have only been open a couple of weeks. So I just want to seed some thoughts before I finish. A key approach is these three areas. We're identifying the core house dust microbiome. We are going to, and we have been doing, identifying the AMR genes in our house dust, and then we're going to look and explore the metal microbe nexus. So in terms of, for those of you who are microbiologists out there, we've been looking at cell viability and we've undertaken DNA extraction. And we've focused on the bacterial communities. And we are now extracting what we see as a core house dust microbiome. And we're looking at taxa abundance, diversity, and classification. So we have a core house dust microbiome. I'm not going to tell you about it because I'm waiting for the postdoc it's their thunder. They've been working on this project. We've now got AMR genes in our house dust. So through metagenomic sequencing, we know there's an array of mechanisms out there. There's a diversity, but we are seeing some core AMR pathways. Again, more on this shortly. And now we're going to start to move into the phase where we explore this microbe metal nexus. So hopefully I've given you a whirlwind tour of the Home Biome project. It's not just me, there's a whole raft of collaborators, and I said most of them are heavily involved in SEGH. And whilst we are focusing on a research-led agenda in part, we're also obviously trying to engage with the community around increasing our environmental health. And I guess the task or the problem I want to set our ECRs is to think about ways we move our research from this kind of collecting data with communities to really engaging them. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jane. That was really, really interesting. We have some time for some questions. You can either use the chat function to put your questions to Professor Entwistle, or you can just raise your hand and just ask your question. So just to kick things off, Jane, I had one question, and you know, somebody that does a lot of work on contaminated sites and doing risk assessments based typically on the soil chemistry and you know, water geochemistry, we tend to be very focused on ingestion as an exposure route, and I think that's because it's fairly straightforward to understand, you know, the pathway for that and quantify the risk. I wondered what your thoughts were, or whether we are underestimating the risk from inhaling dust and really airborne contaminants as a pathway in general, because they are very difficult to assess in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's almost an impossible question to answer, Keith, and that is the kind of, I guess, the holy grail. if we can answer and really partition the difference between the inhalation and ingestion pathway, yeah, that's what us as exposure scientists are aiming for. So, in a way, I think we do underestimate the inhalation pathway, and I think particularly in indoor enclosed spaces. So I think that's the difference. Many of us have probably got a lot of experience of working in outdoor environments, particularly as environmental scientists, where inhalation is probably less compared to our indoor. We spend a lot of time indoors. We have less circulation indoors. So, part of this project, or even the follow-on, is looking far more about our indoor air circulation, and hence the amount of potential of inhalation exposure. So I can only really answer in very general terms, Keith, I would say, at this stage.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions? I'm keeping an eye in the chat window here.
Yes, I see Rodrigo has a question. I see his hand raising.
Yeah, hello. Rodrigo from Mexico. Thank you for this presentation. It's impressive, and it really motivates people to participate. And I got like two questions. One, it's about like the hygienic hypothesis that that like this dust has been always at houses in the people, and we are just start measuring it. I mean, recently. So like the link of is it that bad to have a little bit of dust? Like for training our immune system, right? So probably like to accurate the minimum exposure thing. And the other is, am I imagining like in the future, like with your kitchen, you're having like this gadget that does those measurements, no? Like you can introduce your dust, like the people can be able with a kit or with a little gadget to do their measure, and also link it to the, well, amount of data that that could be related if each house could be, like that could be the next step.
Yeah, like IoT, Internet of Things. Absolutely, Rodrigo. So I'll address the first part of the question first. So yes, people have always been exposed to dust, and I guess one of my responses to citizens when we talk about this is our houses have never been as well sealed as they now are. So, what we bring in stays in for quite a while. Okay, so we're recirculating this dust as well. Okay, not a lot of people still have or use regularly ventilation systems in their houses. So and also we've got more urban environments. So we're building also new products, new materials. We've got emerging contaminants that we hadn't previously been exposed to. So it's a kind of a raft on raft of things. So yes, we have always been exposed to dust, but how much are we now exposed to in our more sealed environments? And also microbes. The microbes, we don't know enough about our microbial communities. Is there an issue now with increasing antimicrobial resistance? We know there is a relationship in our outdoor environment between exposure to of bacteria and microbes to metals and increasing AMR resistance. We don't know much about what that means in our indoor environment. So I would say there is a research agenda still for dust and dust exposure and its links to health, but also from a public health message. And I guess this is kind of why I want the ECRs to really think about citizen science, is we haven't got the message out there that we need to monitor and look at how much dust we're exposed to on indoor environment. It's not necessarily a hazard or a problem, but let's be aware of it. Let's raise awareness, and then in the context where it is a problem, we minimize it. But most of us don't think about our indoor environment exposure to the same extent we think about what we're exposed to outdoors. So I think dust is an issue. And then the second thing is absolutely, I mean, this is a very small project grant, and things we're looking at the moment are very much working with computer scientists and big data. We have smart homes. You know, I've got colleagues who have smart homes from an architectural perspective where, you know, the Internet of Things, we're monitoring everything. So horses for courses, that would be wonderful to get a huge project grant where we can monitor all of the environmental metrics at the same time as indoor air quality metrics, also know about the building and how we can alter ventilation. But I think that's where we need to be going. So you're absolutely right. If we can work with computer scientists, Internet of Things specialists, then we will get more controlled answers because we have more detail.
Thank you very much.
Sounds a great project. Good luck.
Right.
So I had one other question for you, Jane, if you have time. That would be, you know, in looking at a presentation, you definitely see an evolution there from probably the work you did as when you were doing your PhD looking at metals to, you know, completely new processes and technologies. Absolutely. Using DNA, and I just wondered how you adapted to those changes throughout your career.
Yeah, I think the way we evolved as scientists is we take our knowledge, and often developed in very set contexts, and we look at ways of interacting with others. I guess it's this multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary environment. So, you know, you have to be very aware as environmental scientists of what we bring to a project. So think about the skills you bring. And then, you know, I talk to my microbiology colleagues, and they have no kind of ground rules for how toxic something is or benchmarking. And so we can talk about what we know as environmental scientists, environmental health people in that area. And so we bring our experiences. So how do I fit in? I think I bring my own knowledge base to work with others, and we work in this collaborative space. I should say this is what I guess new science now is all about. In particular, they're calling it transdisciplinary working. Mm-hmm. So as ECRs, you need to be looking out what transdisciplinary working is. It's where you and each other individuals come with your own disciplinary skills, and you don't use them additively, but you join them together. So, you know, you adopt methodologies that are new based on all of your individual experiences. And it's the most exciting areas to be working in, Keith, when you're seeing the product of 1 + 1 = 3, if that makes sense.
Right. And maybe part of that is that you have to step outside of your comfort zone to, you know, be exposed to new disciplines. And
I mean, you'll never know all of the answers, and you give a conference presentation now. I mean, I know very little about the microbial work yet, I guess, until it's all been written up and we've submitted the paper, and then I think I'll know more about it. So absolutely, you have to work quite a lot. I mean, I've only got into air pollution in probably the last 2 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. And that's because I found my hook to get into air pollution was particles, dust. Mm-hmm. I know particles. I know particles from an environmental geochemistry point of view since my PhD. But the relevance of particles, both as chemical contaminants in air, but also as these little hotspots of microbial activity as well, you know, you can see a relevance there, and it's finding that niche is exciting. An SEGH community helps with that, because we might all have a common thread around geochemistry and health, but we are all working on different areas and topics, and listening to each other's talks and talking to each other, these little overlaps start to appear, and they're exciting.
Great. Do we have any further questions? I
see a question in the chat about, do you discover high concentrations of cerium and lanthanum? We are using an XRF. So the answer is no. We can't obviously look at the rare earth elements through the standard XRF technology that we're using. we're not extracting, we're not digesting them, we're not going on to ICP, simply because we're looking at, we're hoping to get hundreds of samples in. Okay, so we've got several hundred samples in now. We're using XRF. So again, it's this balance between, if you're funded to do a citizen science project, what science can you achieve with the budget you're given?
Thank you very much, Jane.
Okay.
It was excellent. We are running a bit behind time. I think we should move on with Kate now. And before Keith introducing Kate, I just wanted to tell you that we are going to have a group photograph. So this will be in the end. So cope with us. And I hope you are enjoying this. Let's see what happens next. Keith?
Yeah, great. Well, it's my very great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Kate Dobson, who is a colleague of mine at the University of Strathclyde. Kate is a Chancellor's Fellow in the department. She also shares her responsibilities with the Department of Chemical Engineering. And I believe most of your early work, Kate, was on volcanology. Is that correct?
In fact, yes. The mountains over my shoulder in my picture are actually where I did my PhD fieldwork.
Oh, really? Yes, the layered ultra basics of rum. Yes, very famous. Great. And most of the work you're doing at the moment is related to X-ray tomography, and Kate is a great addition to our department. So with that, I'll hand you over to Kate.
So when Keith got in touch to ask me to speak today, he kind of asked to sort of, if I could look at how my career has evolved and how I navigated the early career stage, which technically I've only just left, although it does seem like a very long time since I did my PhD. Everybody seems to have a different measure for how long an early part of your career is. So I just want to thank Jane for the perfect introduction, because my first slide is almost exactly what she just finished on. So if I just share my screen, can you see the front page of the screen?
Yes, it's fine.
So I am, oh, hang on, like Jane, I've got several screens open. So I am a geologist by background. I'm a volcanologist primarily and originally by application, looking at how volcanoes evolve. But since completing my undergraduate, which was in geology and physics, I've worked in 4 or 5 different departments in 5 or 6 subject areas, and I collaborate extremely widely because the method that I am the expert in is useful to an awful lot of people. So Jane was saying about what interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary is. I put this in at the beginning of my talk because I do all of these things. This is a picture that one of my university career development training people uses, trying to highlight the difference between monodisciplinary, where we do our thing and are the apple, multidisciplinary when we chop ourselves up and mix up with others, interdisciplinary when we smush it all together, and transdisciplinary where we smush it all together and come up with something completely new. So I try and think of what I do, different projects I work on, I have a different role in. So part of what I do is to be responsive and to be interactive with the collaborations across a number of different subject areas. And I think as ECR people, we have an opportunity and a need to be open and enthusiastic about this kind of working in a way that perhaps our supervisors and the more senior members of the department probably don't have the experience that we're going to have. So I just thought I'd do a few slides of what I do to give you a flavor. And then I've got a bit sort of like my how to survive being an ECR slides that I pulled from another presentation I did a few months ago. Please feel free to interrupt me at any time, put questions in the chat. I can see that at the side and I'll come to those at the end. So for me, I'm actually interested in the microstructures inside materials. That could be how oil and gas move in the subsurface. It could be how soils collapse in slope stability problems. It can be how we get resources out the ground. It can be how magma moves in the crust and how magma evolves. I have active projects in all of these areas running at the moment. And in fact, what I'm mostly interested in is in how those structures evolve. It's great. We can look at the subject, at the sample, we can see what it looks like now, but how it got there and what it's going to do next is really important, especially if we start to think about responding to environmental instability as we get more extreme weather events, as we think about maintaining fertility in soils despite warming climates and growing populations, as we think about managing our resources more efficiently and controlling water and oil and gas and putting carbon dioxide back in the ground, understanding how the microstructures that we are using to do all that and how they change is what we really need to understand. And to do that, I work across a whole range of different subject areas. What we need to do is not just 2D, which is what most of us look at, but 3D structures and then 4D time evolution of structures. And that's what I work on. And I do that in the lab using X-ray tomography. We fire X-rays at things, we get out a three-dimensional structure of things, and if we repeat that multiple times through time, we get the 4D element of it. And what I'm interested in is basically in the big, if I talk to my grandmother and she asks me what I do, I say I do seeing inside stuff to do science. I don't honestly care what that stuff is if solving the scientific problem is interesting and useful. I've looked at chocolate and I've looked at magma. I've looked at ice cream and I've looked at molten metals. I work on soils and I work on batteries. The structural changes that happen in all those materials is actually fairly similar, just for completely different reasons. So I'm interested in the dynamics of stuff. So I use lab system tomography in Strathclyde and elsewhere in the UK. And I use big national facilities like the synchrotron, where you get to work with people all over the world and you travel all over the world to use the facility that you need to do what you want to do. So if we think about this in terms of, so that's where I am now and how did I get here, most of us when we start a PhD and probably when we start a postdoc have kind of a linear idea of how most of our careers are going to evolve. This is what we want, this is what we expect. Undergraduate, postgraduate, a postdoc, maybe a fellowship, and then you get a faculty position, and that's you set. These days, with the competition for places so high, most of us are spending 3 or 4 positions in postdoctoral slots, working for other people, working for yourself, depends on where you are and what country and your system, but most people are now taking longer in that early career postdoctoral stage, doing multiple positions, whereas maybe when our supervisors went through, they probably only did 1 or 2 postdoctoral positions before they got their faculty post. So that's what the sort of theory looks like. What did it look like for me? As I've said, I do a bit of everything. So I did my bachelor's in Durham in the UK in geology and physics. I then did a volunteer position working on a volcano to work out if a PhD was really for me, which it was. I came back to the UK, did a PhD in Glasgow. I then had a period working as a short contract, hourly rate, effectively working as a research associate in somebody's lab processing samples for them. I then got my first postdoc back in Glasgow. All of that was in the kind of geoscience end of the spectrum. I then had a problem from my geoscience studies. So I was interested in the 3-dimensional structure of minerals and the association of minerals in rocks, which was really important for one of the dating applications I was doing. So to understand the 3-dimensional structure of minerals in rocks and how they contact each other, you need tomography. So off I went to the US on a grant I managed to secure to go out and work with somebody at Austin, at the University of Texas at Austin, learned how to do tomography, came back with all these cool ideas of how it could be applied to what I wanted to solve. Turned out the money ran out on that project, which was the first postdoc, and I ended up spending a little bit of time unemployed and working piecemeal for teaching job in Glasgow. Then I got a PhD in a materials science department. So I went from understanding landscape evolution and environmental erosional processes to working in a materials science department purely because I had that X-ray tomography methodology that I got at the end of my postdoc. So I was using an opportunity to go sideways. It was a logical progression. It was still geoscience. This was looking at leaching of metals and extraction of copper in a material science department. So they needed a geologist that knew tomography. They were the tomography experts, but I had enough to know what to do with the project. That led me through working with metallurgists, looking at solidification of metals. That took me back to working out that solidification of metals in terms of tomography is very similar to the solidification of magma in terms of tomography. So taking the material scientist skills that I just developed and migrating them sideways into geology, back to geology. And that's where I've led through the next sort of 2 fellowships. And that got me a fellowship funded by the UK government, one of the prestigious NERC fellowships, to work on magmas using material science methods. So again, it's this joining things up, mixing the pot, learning a new skill and applying it somewhere else. And from there, the fellowship gave me a bit more space to focus on other projects that might be interesting, which is when I started delving into the engineering side of things. And that's what's ultimately meant I've moved up to Strathclyde, where I'm now officially on paper, a civil engineer and a chemical engineer. Now, most of my research is still on volcanoes, but actually my core funded project at the moment is still volcanology. But the applications to understanding soil mechanics and how we replace carbon-rich, carbon-exploiting materials in concretes. How do we make a low-carbon concrete? How do we put CO2 into the ground? They're all civil engineering, environmental engineering applications, but ones where the tomography and the methods I've developed for volcanology can actually be really useful. So I moved up to Strathclyde to exploit that ability to have a finger in lots of different projects and be useful to a lot of different people. That's what I do, is I do that. I'm the glue that sticks all these interdisciplinary projects together most of the time. And I think that's something that a lot of us, or you as early career scientists, are probably going to see. Your research evolves through time as you follow the jobs or you find the next position. You'll find you learn new skills. Don't be scared of exploiting those skills to move further sideways. If I write down all my decisions, they're all perfectly logical next steps. But how I've gone from being a volcanologist to being a civil engineer or chemical engineer is completely baffling when you go from one end to the other. But in between, it was really obvious, honest, I promise. So don't be worried about following different subjects or following where the opportunities arise. There will always be something useful, but do try to have a plan. And this is something I had to put together for a physics-based audience a few months ago. Like I said, I talked to a lot of different people. So most of my subject area stuff that I've covered so far is still based on a UK system. And some of the terms I'll use in the next slides are also based on the UK system. But in terms of where you can find funding and support, wherever you are and wherever you want to work will have equivalent options. So just bear with me and ask around if you need extra help, support, or have any questions about that. So my top 10 tips, which I couldn't keep to 10, for surviving being an ECR were these. You can have also, I will give the slides, the slides of this can be circulated, so I'm not going to go through them all in turn, but I am going to pick out a few of these and how I do them, or should have done them in some cases, about how I worked through being a geologist and following my career path. So my first tip is to be productive. We do lots of stuff as academics, even as early career postdocs, when we're employed on a project to do one thing. There's lots of different things that have pulls on your time, and you're asked to do things that are sideways to your project, completely unrelated to your project, of use to other people. Don't worry about taking them, but make sure you use them effectively. Be productive. Make sure you publish. All of your supervisors will say this. High quality is important, but volume can also be important. Having a lot of publications coming through where your second or third author is a collaborator is also good for your CV and career. Have a strategy. Start writing before you get to the end of a project. You need to be thinking, we often find that we're writing the papers for the first postdoc when you're in the second postdoc, or you're writing the paper for the project 2 when you're already in project 3. So the earlier you can start the process, the faster and more effective you will be at doing it. I'll leave that one for now. Say no. You have to say no to so many things to have time to do what it is that you want and need to do. I don't say it enough. And that's a plus for me because I'm interdisciplinary, but you should say no probably more than we do, and only say yes when it's helpful to you. Not to what your supervisor or your boss says, but helpful to you, if you can. Make sure you're visible, go to the conferences, make the networks. Don't rely on others to do it, introduce yourself to people. When I go to a meeting, I've normally got a list of people I want to make sure I go and see and chat to about potential collaborations in the future. Maybe students that I want to encourage to come and work with me, or it may be people that I want to work with, more senior academics, more established academics that I want to work with. Take positions on national committees if they're useful and strategic to helping you develop yourself. Avoid the roles that take all the time and don't give you the credit. That would be the one take home I would say, is there are really cool ideas and things you get asked to do that are not worth the effort that you have if you've got limited time. Know your strengths and sell them. So if you're applying for a postdoc to come and work with me, I want to know that you can do the job that I have lined up for you. If you're applying to come and do a fellowship to collaborate with me, sort of like probably the next step up, you need to show that you are the most amazing person to do that project. And when you start applying for faculty positions, you need to be the most amazing person at what you do, but also show how you fit into other people. So as you evolve through the ECR process, make sure you keep these things in mind about how to develop yourself and present yourself appropriate to who you're talking to. So for me, my strength is that I'm multidisciplinary. I do a bit of everything. The orange text on the right-hand side of the slide are all the active projects I've got a provable track record in at present. I do a little bit of a lot of things. Great. That means I'm a polymath. I can do everything. That's brilliant. That's what some people think. Sometimes, however, you will be perceived as being a jack of all trades, not expert in anything. I'm expert in making the links between subjects and using one thing from one subject in another. But that's not necessarily an easy sell. And when applying for faculty positions, it was difficult sometimes. People saw me as not being an expert or a methods-focused person when they wanted a science-focused person. The fact that I've got very good quality publications and grant money on lots of different areas was hard to sell some places. So be aware of who you're selling to, who you're selling yourself to, and what you want to do with that. Write your CV and your job applications for the job. Don't have a standard CV. My CV is different every time I submit it, tailored to fit the job that I'm applying for. The same with the grant proposals that you'll end up writing as you move through your careers. Plan and respond, be responsive. Allow yourself to adapt to what's thrown at you. We have lots of opportunities. The research agenda is everywhere, it's changing all the time. So have an idea of where you want to get to, but don't worry too much about the path. Allow yourself to evolve. And I've just shown here, there's loads of different, make sure you know the field. So if you're going to be wanting to be an academic in Mexico or France or Australia or the UK, know where you can get your funding, know how you're going to make it work for you. Make sure you do your research before you start talking to academics. I'd love you all to come and work with me, but I have no money for you. So if you come at me with a project that we can fund to bring you to work with me, then I'm going to love you and I'm going to help you get there. Yeah? You have to think about the way these things work as an academic with no time. How do I build my group? I like people that are proactive and know how we're going to get there. And these are the kind of things you can do that take a little bit of effort, but have a lot of payback. And know when to stop. Know when to call the end of a project because it's not working or because you have to stop somewhere. There's always more data. You can always do it better. Do you need to do it better on this project or is that the next project? Also, if you're in a group that's not working for you, when do you leave? Go and find another job. Don't be afraid to move on if it's the best thing for you. So I'm going to leave up with this and I'm going to open for questions. These are the things that have worked for me or why I do things. I'm trying to be strategic and I know I say yes to far too many things. But that is the reason I have lots of publications at the moment. I've only got 20% of my papers have me as first author. 50% of my papers have my students as first author, which for me as an academic is a really important thing. And that's mainly because I have a very large network of people that are working across the world where we're co-supporting students to get the best out of their science and other early career researchers. And I'll leave it there and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, Kate, thank you very much. That was very informative. And I think the things that I took away from that really were, the need to be flexible to kind of follow different opportunities, even if they are a little bit outside your kind of core discipline. One kind of additional question I had, Kate, was, you know, if you've ever, how much thought you've given to professional certifications, and you know, for those of us working in engineering, that tends to be, you know, quite an important thing.
So
Maybe
yeah,
less so in other areas, but I wondered if what your thoughts were on the effort and work required to get those kind of certifications, and whether
so
they
for me,
pay off really.
yeah. So for me, I am at the moment I'm concentrating on getting the teaching, the being an academic certification. So in the UK, most universities run a career development program that covers being an academic, and some of it's teaching, some of it's research practice, some of it's outreach and knowledge exchange. So I am going to have my PG certificate in postgraduate education in the next couple of months. I'm only eligible for that once you get onto a permanent position normally. So that's why I'm only just doing that now. In terms of being chartered or professional sort of qualifications, I've never needed them, because most of the time I've been in a geoscience or material science department where they're kind of not really used. But next, once I tick off the teaching requirement one, I'm going to make sure I get my chartered geologist status. It's not going to help me as a geologist researcher, but it will help me with my engagement with industry people who do see it as a useful qualification. So it's a bit of an effort, and it's a bit of hoop jumping for the sake of it, but there is a benefit to it in terms of being able to engage with a industry focused cohort.
Right, but it almost sounds like you think that's probably something that would be more valuable later on in your career rather than, you know, as an ECR.
I think it depends what you're working in. If you want to go and work in industry or work very closely in industry focused research, very much on the engaged research, maybe co-authored with industry, you might find that having that official commercial qualification, if you like, helps generate those networks quicker. It might get you considered more seriously early on. For me, through my career path, that's not been an issue. I think Jane might have an idea about from her point of view, but for me, it's not been critical. I'd say do it if you need to, but you might not need to.
Jane, do you have any kind of comment on that or any thoughts?
It depends the post you're going for. So I probably echo what Kate has said. You know, some posts will require specific professional, like the civil engineerings that you're already a member. Some will already expect you to have a teaching qualification. So it really is very much job specific, and they, as Kate kind of alluded to, these things are a heavy demand on your time. So sometimes you have to target what activity will get you the job you're aiming for. So.
And if you're looking to be an academic, I would say that time is better spent writing your first grant than doing professional chartership or writing another paper.
Yeah, can I just say, I mean, I'm involved in a lot of job interviews and job appointments over the last few years. And I mean, Kate really summed it up really well in her talk. You've got to have a strong enough CV to get to the shortlist. To get to the shortlist, you need to have publications. And some of those need to be in some really, high quality journals. You don't have to be a first author. You have to be a contributor to those outputs. It's great to see some first author, but the publications get you through the door. So, and grants, if you have an idea for a grant, then approach somebody with it. But remember, you have to be prepared to do the bulk of the work of writing it. Yeah, so I really echo very much what Kate has said.
And that's where conferences and the networks that you develop individually are really useful. Knowing that, if you've got this idea and you can't do it where you are now, but that you met that person at that conference that could maybe help you get through that, or help you get funding because there's a funding pool in the US or in the UK or in the EU that you want to target that means you've got to move in order to get it, then that's where the networks can be really helpful.
Can I say something on this? This is very, very significant because networking is where you catch the beginning of the thread, okay? And I want to point out that many people in science, many students are a bit introvert, and in physical sciences, you are working in a lab, you are a bit isolated, sometimes you are too concentrated and too focused on your experiments, etc. And you are a bit a kind of introvert person. So if you have this type of character, how do you have a specific tip that will make it this tip that, okay, you go to the conference and you go to this person and you start talking to this person, but for some people it doesn't come very easy.
It's a hard one because it's person specific. So I'm far better in person than I am on the phone. And I'm happy with email. I'm good at introducing myself to people on email, but I'm far better talking face to face than I am on the phone. So I find conferences really good. If you are finding it overwhelming, and if you're at a big meeting and it's your first big international meeting, I mean, I'm guessing some people here are used to EGU and AGU where you've got 10, 12, 20,000 people at some of these conferences. They can be very overwhelming places. Find yourself a conference buddy, somebody from your lab or somebody you've met at another meeting or somebody you've met through a network like this, and, you know, buddy up and go and see things and see people and get a feel for how it works or how it is working for you with a friend to hold your hand effectively. It can help. The other one is to introduce yourself to the people who work for the big name. So if you want to go and talk to the big professor, go and chat to their PhD students and their posters and see if they're actually doing the really cool science that you want to do. You don't need to jump straight in talking to the scary big person if their PhD students and postdocs can help you with some of the basic questions. And you're going to have to present, if you want to be an academic, you're going to have to get up and present on one of those big stages sooner or later. So it is a good learning exercise to know how to do it, even if you don't like doing it.
So I think it'll be some time before we're able to, you know, have face-to-face conferences, and I just wondered how you were managing with Zoom conferences and, you know, this alternative way that we've had to learn for engaging with our colleagues. Any kind of comments on that?
I mean, for me, the stuff I know I want to happen and the people I know I want to talk to still happens. The stuff that I'm missing out on is the people you randomly bump into in the queue for coffee or over the water cooler or sat next to in the conference hall, the people you don't know you need to talk to. And now I'm lucky, as I just moved institution, I'm still wrapping up projects from my last, where I worked in my last place. I've spent the COVID lockdown supporting my PhD students, and all my collaborators who've got data already have been busy processing their data because they can access my IT facilities remotely. So my image processing, data processing workflows have all been moved up. So I've got papers that are going to come out in the next 6 months that I wasn't expecting for another 18 months because it's the only bit of work they can do right now, which has been great. But I'm going to have a hole in my outputs 9 months down the line when the stuff that I would normally be starting now isn't happening because I'm not at those meetings. So it's going to affect everybody differently. I think it probably also depends what your project is and what kind of group you work in as to how much it will affect you in the long term. It shouldn't affect anybody much, I think. It's just going to be a bit of that sort of new idea stuff might be harder to get off the ground.
Yeah, those are very good points. Yeah.
There are a few tips also from Jane in the chat. I don't know if someone else wants to ask or comment, or shall we have a small break? And also during the break, You can participate in the next poll if you like. Shall I provide again the way to do it? So you need to go to this browser window, and you need to...
So maybe this might be a good point just to put in a pitch for SEGH and our academic journal, the Environmental Geochemistry and Health, which are certainly is a great place to get a paper published in. I was just looking at the table of contents before we went on air, and there's a great diversity of geographic locations for the papers this issue, from Vietnam to Russia to permafrost to the desert. And we would obviously encourage everybody to write and submit papers to that publication. Also, our own SEGH website, we do publish some stories and news about research that our members are doing. And again, that's a great place to make some contacts and get some exposure for some of your own projects. So those are, that's a kind of low-hanging fruit for people to get something into some exposure that way. I see that Michael Watts has joined us. Michael, did you want to kind of just say something? Michael is our current president and is down in Nottingham at the BGS.
Yeah, sure. I've been here since the beginning. So,
yes.
Many thanks to yourself and Ariadne for organising this, and to Jane and Kate as speakers. Thank you for your time and efforts putting this together. Hopefully, as I've put some comments in the chat box, hopefully this inspires others to set up similar events. So we have a series of events, and this could come from other regions as well, hopefully. And I know that the African section has been having localized conversations, and I think they may be ready to offer something. I don't know. So let's hope something else emerges in 2021. This is certainly going to be a way of working in the future with SEGH Live that we had in June, and hopefully another one we're planning for in February. I've been sending messages to a few people on this screen while I can see them that, you know, would you be interested in giving a talk? So we will announce that hopefully in the next couple of weeks, and just ask for volunteers to present short presentations via a Zoom webinar. I just had one point to go back to, really, is I think that there was a comment about make sure you control what your supervisor is telling you to do. That's very important. I remember from my PhD days, my supervisor would try and get you to do as much as you could get away with. It is a bit of a balance on developing relationships and having a fair and equitable relationship, so that you're doing enough for your supervisor, because they have to free up the time to support you, to read your papers, to correct your thesis. And a lot of this is done in personal time, not just necessarily work time, which is often involves long hours, but also their personal home time. So just remember that you will need to do something or extra to try and free up their time. And also, it's good experience to be doing other tasks for your supervisors. So that's partly why I got my job, because actually here at BGS, because I was doing lots of other things to support roles of my supervisor at the time. But it is learning when to say no. That is one of the most difficult things, and I think that was a really good message from Kate. I think everybody at whatever stage of their career will struggle to say no sometimes. So that's something to be confident about, and perhaps only practice will come for that. But yeah, thanks very much for this session. I don't really have anything else to add, and thanks, Keith, for plugging the SEGH component. Hopefully we can build in the offering that we have from SEGH to all of you as a group, and please do come up with ideas. I mean, essentially this network group we are looking to as the future members of the society, the future board members to control the society. So essentially the new blood who will come up with new ideas to develop for the next 10 or 20, 30 years as we approach our 50th anniversary next year. And we have a number of activities planned, including a series of special review papers across the next year. And of course, hopefully we'll pick up our conference activities next year. So please do get involved. And certainly I got involved with SEGH early on in my career at BGS, not long after my PhD. And as I think Jane said, it is a very good format for developing research links and grant proposals. And a lot of it is about relationships, people that you get on with over coffee or having a chat and so on. Because you need to get on with the people you work with, of course. And that's where that magic happens, when a good interdisciplinary relationship starts a piece of work. Anyway, I'll shut up now. And I was trying to keep quiet earlier, so.
Thanks, Michael. Maybe it's a good point to remind about this special issue, the 50-year anniversary special issue on the Journal of the Society. I know that some of the people that are attending this meeting today are already working on some papers on this. This is a good opportunity to try to work on writing skills also. Coming back to the poll, so we can see that most of the people that are here today come from the earth and environmental science background. But according to Kate, this doesn't mean much. You can come from wherever, and if you have a plan and you are focused, you can advance your career and you can get wherever you want to go, right?
Apply your skills to the problem that you need to solve. Exactly. But you need to have the skills to be able to do it.
Okay. So you want to have a short break, or you want to go all the way to finish this meeting? I would like to invite Aki to say some things, or Rodipo, about the early career researchers' activities in Africa, because I know that regionally they are the most active region, maybe, in terms of ECR activities. So I don't know, is Rodipo or Aki want to jump into the conversation and report on their activities?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Good to be with you. And thanks to Kate and Jane for those wonderful talk. I and Professor Dipo had been interacting to see how we can put together groups from both Nigeria and Kenya to see how the two groups of people could work together in looking at some of the research work they are doing. And we have been able to have our first meeting. The group has been also able to put together a short write-up on their activities. All this is just to focus on ensuring that people are engaged in looking at the similarity in their area of research, and how they can learn from one another, from interacting in terms of networking. One of the things that Kate mentioned in our talk was the issue of conference attendance. And that's one of the things I've always ensured that I insist my people in this part of the world do. And it's important for them to have heard it from someone else, so they know that I've not been too hard on them when I insist they have to attend conferences, because the conference participation allows you to meet with people, and it allows you to network and know what others are doing, and get to know that you're actually not alone in what you are doing as well. It's also enable you to gain more confidence in what you are doing. So hopefully, before the end of the year, myself and Prof, we should be able to have an idea of what we're going to bring out amongst our ECRs. Currently, they have an assignment. I don't know how much they have gone with it. Melvi is on. She's the one coordinating the activities. I'm sure she should be able to give us some reports on how they have gone. But I'm sure we're excited to actually start working together, and the progress so far is very interesting. And I believe we can achieve more. This is an opportunity. I can see most of them are actually on the platform listening to this talk, which is a very good thing. Thank you very much, Harriet.
Thank you. Aki, you want to add something?
Odipo.
You don't know Odipo?
Yeah, I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for the talks from Kate and Jane. And for Africa, we were surprised when the two groups met the first time. There was a lot of excitement, and that's the excitement that we want to carry on, that will make them interested in what they're doing. And it was very nice having the two groups from different parts of Africa, different sides of Africa, West and East, discussing the kind of research they're doing and seeing areas of convergence. So we do think that it's a very nice initiative, and they can talk more about it. It was an idea that we arrived at with Aki and said, well, let's not plan too much. Let's get going. And I think with this we can go far. And now today's talk makes it a lot better, because now we're sharing experiences from others and seeing how others do research. And we know that some of the challenges we have are shared, so you don't feel so bad about the few challenges that we get. Let me say that's all I have for now. Maybe Melvin may want to say one thing briefly.
Yeah.
Just a moment.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. On behalf of the ECR group, I would like to say that we all agreed as a team from Kenya and Nigeria that we will work jointly on the assessments of lake, river basins, and also the wetlands in our respective countries. And through these studies, we'll be able to highlight the similarities and differences of these critical environments within the concept of ecological sustainability. So these collaborations will lead to better science on both sides and also provide opportunities for sharing resources. And also ultimately, the production of sound scientific publication with the mentorship and support of our supervisors. So we honestly hope that this will make research and help us alleviate to several non-academic challenges associated with the graduate studentship in the developing countries. That's just a brief information from my end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melvin.
Yeah.
Okay. We want to hear more from you, people, ECR people. So be free to ask questions or make more comments, and you can keep going into the poll. I put now a new question is about your proposals for future activities of this network. So you can enter again and start seeing if we get some responses on this. Please do. In the meantime, I don't see any hands raising. Yes, there's a comment in the chat from Keith. He hopes to see everyone in Kenya next year. We all hope that we will be able to have a live meeting in beautiful Kenya. In the meantime, I guess we need to keep putting our efforts in keeping the network together and building a community of the ECRs through these chats. Okay, so now I see that some answers are coming in. If I share this screen. It is somehow minimized. But environmental impact of mining, future activities of SEGH ECR network. Could they work more on future strategy, follow on from the short communication in the journal from the ECRs? Some people are voting on the environmental impact of mining. So I guess future activities of the network should focus on this. This is in Spanish. I don't know, maybe we need a translation here. Soil sustainability. Environmental impact of mining keeps growing. Organize webinars. Yes. This is an activity that we should make an effort to organize some more webinars during the coming months. I think we all agree on this. Short communication in the journal from the ECRs. The webinars are winning now, organize webinars. So future activities as also as a next activity, this should be a priority one, I guess. Okay, I think we are coming towards the end. Michael has a comment here. Okay, we need to say thanks to the speakers. Maybe we can have a screenshot. So I maximize this, and everybody who wants to turn on cameras and have a group photo, because before we go now is the time to do it and have a nice smile on our faces. I will do the print screen. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, more people are smiling now. That's nice. Great. Okay, I have a few black windows. Maybe there are camera problems. Okay, let's smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I go to the next screen again. 1, 2, 3. Let me copy this before I lose it. Okay, and one more on the previous screen. Sorry. One more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's great. Okay, so I think we should say bye-bye for now. I hope that you all enjoyed this. I will leave the next poll on, and this is how did you find today's webinar? Let me put this on, and then you're able to vote. And I remind you that this will be, the recorded session will be available for you through the website. And also, of course, we always ask for pieces to put on the blog in the website. Okay, so this would be a good starting point for you to practice with writing skills, even informally. And that's it from me. Nice to see you all. Keith?
Yes, thank you everyone for participating. I certainly got a lot out of it, and hopefully you did too. You know, I think we should all stay engaged with through SEGH, and hopefully I'll be able to say hello to some of you in person at the conference in Kenya next year. So thanks everyone, and thanks Ariadne for hosting this event, and both of our speakers.
Yes, thank you all. Okay, most people are happy with this webinar, and we should be doing more. So, bye-bye.
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 Bye.